Wonderful. Welcome, everyone. Well, we are very glad that you were able to join us today for our webinar, Fostering Coaches' Growth, the Power of Parallel Process Using the Class Lens. My name is Liz Savage. I'm our Director of Marketing Events here at Teachstone, and I'm very excited to guide us through today's session. As many of you are likely aware, if you are a coach or if you're working with the class tool here at Teachstone, we believe that interactions are the foundation of learning, but that is not just for children, that is for adults too. The way we support our educators and our coaches can and should reflect the very same kinds of meaningful, intentional interactions that we want to see happening in the classroom. And so that is what today's session is all about, the parallel process, that when the way we coach and support adults mirrors are those effective child educator interactions, we can build stronger relationships. And today's session was actually first presented at our Interact Class Summit in 2025, where it was highly reviewed, highly enjoyed. And so I reached out to the team that presented it and asked them to come back and bring it to a broader audience, because I knew it resonated so strongly with our attendees. And so that's why we're all here together today. And speaking of our Interact Class Summit, I am also very excited to tell this group, for really the first time we're telling anyone publicly, where Interact 2026 will be. And so we hope that you will join us in Chicago in 2026. More to come very soon. We will have more details and share. We'll open the call for proposals at the end of this month. And so if you are inspired by what you hear today and want to hear more sessions like it, or if you have insights of your own to share with the class community, keep an eye out, and we'd love to see your ideas submitted or see you in Chicago in April. Oh, I'm going too fast. So we will get right to our housekeeping. I saw some of you already using the chat to ask this. Yes, the session will be recorded. You will get an email tomorrow that will both have the recording of the session, the slides, and any resources mentioned. And so if you can't stay for the whole thing, or your team wasn't able to join, we'll share that with everyone tomorrow. And the very last thing that seems like everyone's also found, I will be keeping an eye on both the chat box and the Q&A throughout the session. And so if you have questions for us here at Teachstone, or any concerns about the webinar, or you want to interact with the presenters, they will also be able to see our webinar chat. Go ahead and chat in anything just like you are with your roles. And then we will save the last 10 minutes or so to do a Q&A. And so if you have questions that you don't want to have the sort of whole webinar audience see, but do want me or our presenters to see, you can put them in that Q&A box, and I can answer your question privately, or if it's for our Q&A session at the end, I'll bring it back to our team of presenters. All right, well, with that, let's get started. I'm going to hand it over to Janelle, Lauren, and Dawn, who are going to dive into the power of parallel process through the class lens. I'm going to stop sharing my screen so you can see theirs. And take it away.
Okay, well, welcome to this webinar. And as she mentioned, Dawn and Lauren and I presented this at the Interact 25. So we are all with the Missouri Quality Assurance Report Project, which is kind of the quality rating system in Missouri. And each of us are what we term as team leads. So each of us supervise about 8 coaches apiece. And so this whole seminar, this webinar that we wanted to talk about is how we are helping the coaches and how they work with the educators. We're using that same parallel process and using that class lens to have a common language to help them foster their own growth and their own skills. So our objectives are a little bit just how we use the parallel process and explaining to you what we're talking about with parallel when we're talking about parallel process, and to convey the impact that we have seen this have on our coaches, as well as discussing the effectiveness of the process and maybe some of the challenges as we help coaches to build their skills. So the parallel process is so have you ever stopped when you're interacting with other adults or even with children and you find yourself, I know I found myself after we started learning class, and I'd go, oh, I'm using educator sensitivity, or I'm using positive climate. So we're talking a lot about using those same class dimensions and indicators in our interactions with other people, because we know it's still effective interactions whether you're working with adults or with children. So the parallel process that we're talking about focuses on effective interactions. As we know, class focuses on those for child outcomes, providing that common language and having a common understanding in order to improve those interactions. So we want coaches to mirror those same interactions when they work with educators. So, and then as team leads, we are consciously using these same interactions, the same dimensions and indicators in our coaching of the coaches in order to develop and help them to see how all of this is leading to better interactions. Kind of in a nutshell, we've talked about that it's walking the walk. So for example, we want educators to ask open-ended questions of children. So we want our coaches using open-ended questions when they work with the educators, and we as team leads use open-ended questions in working with our coaches. So looking at the class lens, that's supposed to say organizational. I know when I was worried about that L scooting over, but it worked when we had it on the big screen. So I guess it doesn't now. But in emotional support, it's all about, we're looking at providing our coaches and modeling the way that we would want them to support their educators, that we try and provide that support to them. In the organizational support, it's a lot about in helping them to be prepared and making their visits productive that they do with educators. And then especially heavy in the instructional support, in that we want them to use the dimension of concept development. So getting your educators to use some analysis and reasoning. So we ask of our educators, trying to get them to think, to use that, as well as using a lot of the quality of feedback indicators and the providing feedback loops and doing scaffolding in it, especially the providing information and the encouragement and affirmation, because that's a big part of helping people to feel supported. And then in the language modeling, we're kind of looking at those open-ended prompts that you want educators using. So we try to use that in our coaching with our coaches, that we want them using educator prompts. So in talking about that, we're going to talk a little bit more about what is supervision versus coaching, because as I mentioned, we're in and I don't know, this is unique. I don't know what other states are doing, but we are supervisors, but we're also coaches. So we have to kind of wear both hats. And The supervision is more about monitoring and managing them doing their job versus the coaching, which is about empowering them and helping guide them and developing them as an individual and developing their skills. So directive in supervision is just about ensuring they do their job versus we want to be supporting, getting them to use some self-reflection, setting goals, do problem solving. In monitoring, we're just making sure someone is making, so for us, example, making sure they're all making their visits with their educators. But that is directly related to collaborative, where we are working with our coaches to help them improve their skills and encouraging them to discover their own solutions, self-discovery of what do you do well, what can you do better. And then finally, with the performance-based evaluation that we do biannually with our coaches, and we're looking at evaluating their performance, but we much prefer our coach role in being goal-based, where we help them to develop a specific goal that they want to work on, that it's about achieving that goal or even setting longer-term goals. And all of it is about improving their performance, improving their coaching skills. So as team leads, we often take our hat on and off to whether we are supervising or whether we're coaching. I feel we have weekly meetings with our coaches, and I feel like in that it's pretty much entirely coaching. Our supervision hat rarely comes on. It's mainly when we're looking at those annual evaluations. So I'm going to send it over to Dawn, and she's going to talk a little bit more about what we use with educators and with our coaches.
Hi, I'm Dawn, and again, welcome everybody. So I want to move us into the what of our process. And our what is practice-based coaching. And I'm going to dive relatively deeply into it and not assume that anybody already knows what it is. I discovered at Interact and some other conferences that I've been at that this is a pretty widely known tool. But I'm going to move into it and use this to describe it the best way that I know how. And so practice-based coaching is a cyclical model for helping folks move through and lead to having more effective practices, and it leads to positive outcomes for folks. And so I like to describe it this way. So the outside part, our collaborative coaching partnership, is what holds it all together. This is where we form our relationships. And it's more than just a relationship, it's a partnership. You have a brief relationship with the person that you got your coffee from at Starbucks. But this is much more. This is coming together for shared understanding and making yourselves vulnerable to each other. So that's where we start, and we work from that. The partnership is always developing. It's continuously developing as you move through this and you share more learning together. And the next thing I want to do is I take us to the middle. So this partnership is centering around our effective practices. And in this situation, our effective practices are the ones that go with practice-based coaching. From that point, so we've chosen a set of practices, and then we come together and we work on developing goals. And so it's a shared goal and action planning setting where it's not prescriptive. It's based on doing observations, seeing what they're doing, and then letting them assess their own strengths and their own needs. And as their coach, I'm also working with them to assess their strengths and their needs so we can come together for a shared plan. The next thing that happens, and where this shared partnership is very important, is the focused observation. And so a focused observation is more than just what it seems. It's not like doing a class observation where we're that person in the corner with the clipboard. the focused observation has multiple parts. It's got the essential parts, but then it's got the enhanced strategies. And so during a focused observation, I might be, as the coach, coming in and modeling that goal for the first time to see how it's going to work in whatever environment that it's being trialed. At that point, another thing that might be happen during that focused observation is that I've got the educator or my coach taking notes and taking data on me, so that once we're done with doing the focused observation, another very important point about a focused observation is that the only thing that is addressed in that moment during that time of a focused observation is the goal. Everything else in the practice is not worried about, not addressed. So we just stay there. And then the last piece of the distinct piece is the reflection and feedback. And this is a time when the coach and the coachee come together and have a very deliberate conversation about what happened during that focused observation. The focused observation can happen immediately after, but very often it takes some time to really reflect as the individual who was part of that, either the coach or the coachee, and then come together to talk about what happened in that moment, and then to use different sort of reflecting strategies where we help them dive back into their mind, dive back into what happened, to let them come forward with using the data, using what happened to determine next steps. And then we take it back to shared goal and action planning. It's usually 2 or 3 cycles around before a goal is mastered, but it could be that the goal is mastered in one cycle because you were intentional about it. So that's what we use to make our way through, and that we're always using this to refine our practices. So I want to make a distinction between competencies and practices. And so as you can see on the slide, the competencies are the things we know, what we do, and the temperament that we possess as we're doing these things. Competencies are things that we've learned, and they may be certifications, accreditations, different things like that. But then what the practice is really taking those competencies, those things that are in your mind, and bringing them forward to make sure that we are implementing what we know. So when we think about a practice, we're thinking about how are we taking that knowledge and putting it into work in that environment. So if I'm a coach working with a coachee educator, then I'm helping them put together what they've learned about interacting, these effective interactions with children in the learning environment. Or I, as the coach working with my coachee, I'm helping them use things like paraphrasing and backing up. So they've got the knowledge, the competency of a paraphrase, but how are they putting it back into action? And so through practice-based coaching, they have developed different domains. And then within each domain, there's 4 or 5 different indicators, basically. And really, as I've described the process using I call it the medallion, the practice-based coaching medallion, you can see preparation. These are things like, are you ready? Have you practiced your skills? Do you have yourself organized, all of the material? Focusing on that partnership. Are you sensitive to their cultural? Have you taken the time to know them, to know where they are as learners? And then again, goal setting. Are you using SMART goals? What kind of things are you using for action planning? And then how are you conducting your focus observations? What kind of data? And then the reflection and feedback. What kind of questioning are you doing? And then professional development. Again, what are you doing to make sure you're always growing yourself? So I also wanted to say that when we bring on new coaches, we train them We have them shadow folks. We have them work with their team leads to go out. We have a mentoring process. And so we give them time to learn all of the skills. And once a coach has been working in our project for 6 to 8 months, then we feel like they've got the information and they're using it to fidelity. And then we let them start stepping back and breaking down the little bits of the process to help them grow. And that's when we start this coaching process with them. Lauren?
Muted. So we start this coaching process with the coaches, and we also have that self-awareness, like Janelle mentioned at the beginning, of how we are supporting coaches, building on our self-awareness by reflecting on how we apply class principles to our interactions, focusing on deepening relationships, organizing the process, deepening understanding. So we're going to talk some about how we might connect, engage, and inspire our coaches. So please feel free to use the chat. We have a question for each of the domains, and so I'm going to give, I just want to throw out to the group, how might you, or how can you as a leader or a coach, if you're a coach, create supportive, trusting relationships that mirror emotional support in the classroom? So again, talking about this parallel process, how can you as a coach do this? Maybe you're a leader or a supervisor and have that supervisor coach hat like we do. How can you support your coaches in doing this? I see a lot of great things coming through. A lot of encouragement, positive feedback, positivity, building on goals together, active listening. Yes. Let's see. I'm going to touch on that active listening. That is something that we are intentional about, and that's part of that mindful coaching as well, right? Like listening to understand, not to respond. So building that trusting, emotional, supportive relationship. Let's see, getting to know staff on a personal level. So showing interest, asking questions that are personal outside of work life. So connecting on that level. Thank you. Let's see, giving breaks, reflective conversations. Yes, see a lot of listening here. Being clear with expectations. We are going to get to that. Smiling, yes. Having fun with your job, bringing joy to our work, right? Children bring joy to our work. And so when we're in these adult spaces, trying to keep that connection to joy, and being authentic, accepting, respecting. We want our coaches, we want our educators who our coaches are working with to feel respected and valued and heard. Again, just like we want for children. Let's see. It's difficult keeping up. You all are so engaged in the chat. Genuine interest.
I did see somebody say celebrating the wins with them. I'm not sure if you caught that one, Lauren, but that is absolutely.
Yes, celebrating those wins and small wins too, not just the big ones. Those definitely keep us going. Thank you. I wanted to also mention checking in. So we meet with our coaches once a week, and just providing that space and just check-ins to really see how our coaches are doing. And whatever the frequency of your coaches, meeting with educators, having those moments of collaborative partnership and checking in and touching base before getting to the work, right? Like that is part of the work too. Building this collaborative partnership and emotional trust is part of our work. 3 highlights and 3 that are roses and 3 challenges, thorns. Love that. Thank you. All right. Connect is always such a fun one to talk about, so I'm going to move on. I could stay there forever. All right. So let's move into engage. So how can you as a coach or a leader or coach of a coach, model some organizational strategies. So just organizing the process, organizing the work. How might we do this for our coaches, or how might we do this for our educators? Some things to think about might be, how might we be ensuring our expectations are clear and setting those expectations, being prepared for meetings. Are we prepared for those meetings? How might we engage each individual educator, each coach? We work across the state, and so some of our coaches, and weekly we're meeting with our coaches through Teams, right? Virtually, like we're doing now, the webinar. So how do we ensure that we can stay and keep our coaches engaged in the work? Be prepared. Yes, be prepared. There is nothing worse than going to a meeting or even facilitating a meeting like, oh gosh, what are we doing, right? You feel terrible as the facilitator or the leader, and it's hard to make that time the most effective it can be if we don't know what we're going to deliver or talk about. Choices, preparation. Let's see, scroll up here. Offer a variety of coaching strategies. Yes, those effective coaching strategies. Thank you. Enhanced coaching strategies. Giving choices, knowing the agenda. Procedures across the program, ensuring that we have procedures and guidance, that they're consistent, that we're transparent, so we're all on the same page. Again, to ensure that we're doing our work, meeting expectations and also doing it most effectively. Building a schedule and holding to it. Regular communication. Having different modalities and for resources shared. It's great. Follow up. Preloading a meeting through email or text. So that's a good idea, so that people know what to expect. Great. Meeting a variety of learning styles. Demonstrate, model. We co-coach with the coaches that we work with. We try to go every other month. And so that does give us an opportunity to engage in another way and to model if needed. And so we're able to do that and build that into our schedule as well. Sending quick emails for check-in, providing encouragement, supplying resources. Thank you. Right. I'm gonna keep going, keep typing in there. I'm sorry, I'm not addressing them all. There's a lot. We love, everybody can see all of your ideas. That's great. We move to inspire. So deepening understanding, right? That light bulb, the ahas, motivational, motivating, keeps us going. So how can you provide feedback and strategies for improving coaching techniques and using deeper thinking? So this is digging deep. This can be a little bit harder to address or to be intentional about. And it's very important, right? We want to inspire our educators just as they're inspiring our children and our coaches. Linking progress on goals to child outcomes and long-term benefits of the work. And we need to do that with our coaches as well, and our educators, their work, highlighting the outcomes so they know the why behind the work that we're doing. Open-ended questions. Yes, gathering those ideas, those perspectives. Reflective questioning. I see a lot of reflective questioning here. Having coaches reflect on their own coaching practices by filling out their own needs assessment. Yes, we have them do that. What Dawn was talking about, setting their goals after 6 months-ish of being on with us. So using needs assessments to identify their strengths and needs, and then basing goals off of that. Brainstorming, yeah, that concept development, right? It's just as important for us as adults to brainstorm, to build on those ideas. Ensuring professional development is relevant, right? We know those adult learning principles, so ensuring that it's relevant, just like we want to connect learning to children's everyday lives, ensuring that the work that we're doing with the adults is relevant as well. All right. We implement book study that has been tied to class we dig into class, we dig into practice-based coaching. And so building on those concepts to deepen understanding. So offering more opportunities for adults to do that as well. All right. And here too, a lot of that encouragement that you all mentioned before, those small wins, celebrating, keeps us going. We all, it's a hard job. It could be overwhelming at times. And so celebrating each other and building in that time for that scaffolding is so important. All right. Move to Janelle with the impact of this.
Like you said, I always have to, oh, wait a minute, I'm muted. So we're going to look back at each of these domains and look at how, because you guys had lots of great ideas. So how is using those things that you listed, how that is helping to support your coaches and what kind of impact that has on your coaches. So I'm going to start with the emotional support domain and think back to what you guys were putting in the chat. So some of you said about giving choices, connecting, making eye contact. So all of those are about interacting positively, respectfully. So when we do that, what kind of impact does that have on the coach? They can see us as a source of support and guidance, that it's not a got you, it's not our supervisor hat. We truly want to treat them respectfully and positively and know that we're there for them. So when we do those things, we're providing a secure base, which the impact it has on the coach is about helping them to feel comfortable in reflecting and to making changes, that we want them to feel like they can make changes in their practice, they can try things. So that's kind of scary to do with someone who's also your supervisor. So we really work to nurture their autonomy, and that by letting them try things, and whether it works or doesn't work, that the impact on them is to trust themselves and be willing to try some new things. Lauren, go ahead and hit that one. So we really want them to feel that if they fail, that's okay. We'll try something else. We really support the coaches looking at their own interests. And it's the same as we do with educators, that we ask them, they look over those coaching competencies that Dawn mentioned, and they look at it and say, what are you interested in learning more about? What's going to help you to be motivated, rather than us coming to them and saying, as a supervisor might do, oh, you need to work on providing better reflection and feedback. We're letting them guide what they're interested in. And by letting them guide their own learning, that helps them to build from their strengths, what they see they're already doing well, which encourages them to be able to take risks and try new ways of supporting things, and not feeling like if it doesn't work out well, it's not going to come back to bite them. So that's kind of under the emotional support. So we're going to go over to Dawn with organizational support and what the impact that has on coaches.
Okay, so let's start with providing clear learning objectives. And so when we think about class, we think about, what is that? Facilitation? Is that facilitation of learning? No. Oh, no. Wrong indicator. Engage support for learning. Thank you. But, those clear learning objectives, what are we going to do? It helps them stay focused on their goal. And then next, we're really working on providing clear communications for the expectations of the process. Well, through practice-based coaching, we have the framework for the learning. We have setting the goal, and then what sorts of action steps are you going to get to the goal? How are you going to engage in doing your focused observation? And then we have structure that is really consistent for doing the reflection and feedback. So it's always the same for those adult learning. They know what to expect in this process as we've learned it, and we're taking what they're doing and we're building on it. And then part of what this does is it really helps them promote their interests, and then they're engaging because this is what they want to do. It is, as we would say, it is coach focused. And so it helps them, we follow their lead, we go with them, that keeps them fully engaged in the process. As Janelle said, there's nothing really prescriptive about this. It is what they want to do and how they want to move forward, and generally at their pace. I will say that I have a note that this comes from strengths-based coaching, practicing the parallel processes from Teachstone too. So there's another resource where you can get a little bit more of this information.
Yes. All right. We're going to move into instructional support. So when we, as a coach of a coach or a coach of an educator, facilitate understanding of concepts and ideas, the coaches apply those concepts throughout their work. And so here specifically with our team, we're facilitating that understanding of the class, effective interactions, and the practice-based coaching concepts. So digging into those is supporting the coaches implementing those in a deeper way. When we provide feedback that expands their knowledge and awareness, then coaches are able to better reflect on their practice. So just opening it up, like, have you considered this? And so having them have space to reflect, building in that time. When we help coaches develop their ideas, again, we're building on their interests and strengths like Dawn just talked about, and then we're helping them build on those and develop their ideas. They're thinking more deeply about their daily practices. So thinking about this inspiring them to go further. And then when we use class language in our coaching, this parallel process to describe their thinking, then they're more informed and fluent in that shared language as well. Like Janelle started off with saying, as we learned more about class, like, oh, I'm doing that. That's teacher sensitivity, or that's educator sensitivity. And so calling that out and using the language in our work with each other, with the adults, then we become we're more apt to use that shared language together.
And before we go on with this one, Lauren, I want to make a comment about what Lauren was saying. Because this was an incident that came up with one of my coaches that was very, very frustrated with a center because they kept canceling on her, and because they didn't have anybody to release them. They didn't, for whatever reason. And so even with coaching, I reminded her, hey, remember about educator sensitivity, that they're having a hard time right now. And she keeps having people quit. That's hard as an administrator to have people constantly quitting on you. And so really encouraging them to think through that class lens of using that educator sensitivity with directors or whoever that you're dealing with. So our next bit that our last little bit that we're going to talk about is about the effectiveness that coaches have had on their practice using those competencies. And I know that there was a question in the question and answer section about where to find the competencies. So I put that in the chat or in the Q&A, the address of where you could go to find those. And so we're going to talk a little bit more about how coaches make a big impact. So the strategies that we use in integrating these parallel processes is that we model for them. And Dawn had mentioned that we go out, and I think Lauren too, that we go out and we do co-coaching visits. And it's not an observation of them. It's not an evaluation of them. It's maybe they're saying, hey, watch how I'm helping guide this educator in determining a goal. How can I do it better? Or even we might have a suggestion for them, but if they have a focus, their action plan, then we focus on what they want us to look at. So Lauren mentioned we do that about every other month, just in helping them grow to be the best coach they can be. And, this is all to say that all of us as team leads, we have also been coaches for educators as well. So we all still carry our own caseload of educators we work with, and we have experience before being in this role. So we do understand where they're coming from. And so in the using the class language, that's the example I was giving with one of my coaches. I was saying, looking at that language, that we want to be using positive climate with our educators. We want to be using quality of feedback and using those feedback loops to help them get where they need to go. We encourage the coaches to reflect on their own interactions. And so those of you that might be familiar with practice-based coaching, they have a observation form, and that educators use when they're in the classroom doing a focused observation. Coaches use with educators when they're in the classroom. We use the exact same form when we're doing a focused observation with one of our coaches, and we're focusing on giving them that positive feedback, that constructive feedback, next steps. And so that's how we really want them to reflect on their own coaching to guide the discussion. And then, of course, we provide feedback, and we want it to be specific and timely and aligned with those PBC competencies, but also aligned with what we see them doing, and not making that assumption. So Dawn's going to talk a little bit about the program enhancements that we've added as part of our coaching.
Yes. So I just noticed in the chat that somebody asked where could we get this form? And quite frankly, we took the form from the practice-based coaching book, and it's in their appendix, and it's got a place where you write what you observed. And then it's got the 4 boxes for coach reflecting, then the feedback, and then the suggestions. So that form is part of the practice-based coaching appendix materials. So as we've made our way through this process, that's enough.
No, I love that comment in the chat.
Yeah,
I can't write fast enough.
Okay.
So all of this is being recorded, so you'll be able to see the recording later.
Yes, there's a lot of information to pack into 45 minutes.
Yes.
Yes,
Because even when we presented on it, it was like an hour and 15, I think, something like that. So
yeah.
So thank you. As we have made our way through this, and we're learning, things have come out of it. The coaches have created a lot of tools, and they have we've started collecting things like on what is paraphrasing, and we have tools for those. We've taken some of our coaching sessions, and we recorded those to help other newer coaches look and see what can happen and what it can look like. Through this, we mentioned our one-on-ones, and so at least once a month, during our weekly meeting, we carve out time to really reflect on their practices, how it's going, what they're doing. We are continuing to really focus in, as it says, on targeting those areas of the competencies and where they have the indicators. And then really, as we're building and helping them select goals and helping with them, we are also learning and growing, and have become, we think, better leaders for our team, broader leaders to help them. So we're learning right along with them.
We have a few quotes from some of our coaches to just show the impact based on one. This is a coach that I work with that was intentional. Her goal was to enhance her knowledge with some more infant development and behavior to help better support some of those highly effective infant educators. And she started using resources and articles that she was using for herself with the educators to set goals together. And her quote here, "My goal has helped me feel more confident. Knowing more about the why behind interactions in the infant classroom has been helpful I even got a teacher who wasn't interested in Teachstone, interested and wants to engage more and is utilizing the blog and the videos in Teachstone.
And I had a coach that wanted, and that it's very common for the coaches to select one part of their coaching skills to really work on. So this one was an educator who felt like she was asking reflection questions, but they weren't really getting to where she wanted the educator to have her own aha moment. And so we worked on planning different types of questions that would build on itself. And so this was, again, and we didn't solicit these. These were things that our coaches had sent to us saying, oh, I tried that. Here's what happened. And so in this case that she was saying, she's always intentionally planned the reflection questions, but by having ones that build on each other helped her to kind of get the educator with where she wanted them to go. And she kind of had the realization that it was much simpler to actually do it this way than the way that she was doing it, and more intentional.
And so I had a coach, and the way she put it to me when she said, I need to get better at this. And so she said, I want to be better at sitting with the silence and making sure I'm getting where I want to get with them. And so she would listen. And so ultimately, she ended up writing a goal for paraphrasing to be a reflective listener. And so she would listen to what they said, wait a minute, paraphrase, and wait to get that buy-in. And so it's really, really helped her with that conversation and helping engage in those collaborative conversations to get educators moving forward.
I always say it's so hard to find an active listener. So to have a coach that's actively listening and paraphrasing what you're saying, like how valued that educator feels, I can only imagine.
Dawn.
Oh, okay. So as you think about this and you think about your own practice, what we've described, what would be one thing that you would want to try? So you go ahead and put these in the chat, share with us.
And as we're kind of thinking about that, I know all of us have had administrators who we're expected to treat children one way, but then they might be treating us a different way. And so a lot of the things our coaches work on are not things that ever come up in their biannual performance evaluation. We might put in that they're a reflective thinker or that they're really working on their practice, but we don't, it's not, unless things aren't going well, but generally they're not anything that they see again coming up in performance evaluations.
Wow, I saw somebody put in here that they want to start using a lot more of this class language as they're interacting with the people they're coaching. Yeah, having that common language.
And great to have a tool that measures interactions, because it doesn't matter what age you are. You have this tool to be able to base that on. Go ahead. Sorry, Janelle.
No, that was exactly what I was going to say. Is when we were all new to class, it was like, oh my gosh, this isn't just with children. This is with everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Allowing coaches time to process their information, giving it that wait time, that, regard, being responsive to them.
It's so important to slow down. All of this, if we can just slow down and focus on this and be intentional, it's easy to get wrapped up in all the logistics of everything.
Can you talk a little bit more about your observations that you do with the coaches? Oh, I went to the questions. I don't know if we're ready for that. Love modeling of the instruction. So yeah, I think we could move into Q&A.
Perfect. I'm back. Uh, yeah, that was wonderful. And I strongly agree with all of the comments in here about how this was a lot of information. Again, there will be a recording of this. You didn't need to furiously take notes. We'll share as much as we can after the fact. And I've got links to lots of resources that I'll put in the email as well. But yeah, let's take the last couple of minutes and open it up to any questions you all might have. Melissa did chat in that she's hoping the team here can talk a little bit more about observations that you do with your coach. Anyone want to
Well, I'd like to pipe in and say, we don't call it an observation. We call it co-coaching. So we are very much there to co-coach with them, and using the knowledge we have of coaching does not, just like coaches go in with educators, we don't go in with, we know all, that we know this, there is only one right way to do this. We want to see how it's working and then maybe be able to provide some suggestions. And we focus on what they want us to look for.
So like asking, how might I best support you when I come visit with you? And then we know, do they want us to model something specifically? Or is it what their goal, their goal as the coach is, are we going in and doing a focused observation, but we've already determined with the coach what enhanced coaching strategy would they would want us to, how they would want us to support. So is it side-by-side cues? So we use those enhanced coaching strategies in practice-based coaching during that time as well.
Right. So we sit right there with the coach, and we even tell them not to introduce us as their supervisor. We are their coach, just like they're the coach for the educator. So I'm there to help the coach, not to be looking at the educator and what's the educator doing. So I think that helps to define our roles really clearly.
So somebody else asked, what sort of goals are the coaches setting for themselves? So I've had goals, educators, an organization goal. And so what they wanted to learn about was helping create, so for the professionalism, some automaticity. But like I've mentioned, I've had goals. Educators create goals for learning to be better at paraphrasing. I've had goals where they wanted to learn to be better models. Some of the strategies they employed was actually announcing, I'm going to start modeling, do the modeling, and then announcing they're stopping, not assuming that the educator knows they're modeling. Some things like that. You guys, what are the types of goals?
And I would like to add, I mean, this kind of looks at a little bit of what the others, because I don't know we've explained this well, but we ask them to draw up an action plan based on practice-based coaching. And so, because you guys are asking about, well, how do they know how to do this? We go out and find resources to support them, just like they do for educators, that they find resources to support the educator in their goal. So for example, I had one that was, and one of the questions was about instructional support. And so we ended up turning towards adult learning theories and really looking and investigating into what adult learning theories say about trying to get others to think. So that's kind of part of their action plan. We write an action plan, we give them resources, we check in with them, we see how it's going, we adjust it as needed.
Now I had a coach working on goal setting, goal setting because she was writing goals too broad and too big. And so then she, on the resources we pulled, she developed a tool for herself that some of the team is actually using now that helps her to better ensure that her goals are measurable and more specific. And now that tool has been used as part of some helping educators do some self-coaching as well. And so that's part of those tools being developed, like Dawn mentioned earlier.
There was a question about if a person is struggling in a specific area and they don't see it, what steps would you take? And that's when we really are looking at that instructional support domain of class in providing them, doing feedback loops, scaffolding them, because a lot of times they do know it. And it's the more you ask questions, how is that working? How did you feel like the educator understood that? Then I really feel like you really don't have to just tell them. They really do come to it. And sometimes you may have to guide a little more, but I feel like they come to it.
And one of the things we do have, and I neglected to mention, is there's needs assessments. And so we, through what Janelle just said, we narrow it down to an area, and then they're allowed to, then we give them the needs assessment where they read some prompting questions to say, yes, I know, no, I don't know. That helps them narrow their focus too. So it's in tandem with what Janelle says, that we get to the proper needs assessment for them.
And we still, when we're coaching, are still trying to build on their skills. That's when so we didn't talk about challenges, but that's one of them that we're aware of, that when we have to take off the coach's hat and become a supervisor again at times, we might not necessarily be setting that practice-based coaching goal on something that an coach, if there's a concern about something, then we're a supervisor and we need to address that maybe in a different way or set some goals. But that's not as, the parallel process piece of coaching, we are still having the coach identify the goals that they want to work on. Hope that makes sense. So we do have to switch sometimes to be supervisor if there's something that we're concerned about that somebody might not be aware of.
And I think playing off of what Lauren was saying, that when we do have somebody who has some skills they need to work on, and we've helped them, we've identified those skills, we still ask them for their input. How can I best support you? How can I help you to learn more? What would be the best way for us to provide that? And that even goes a little bit into the question about what do side-by-side cues look like, because we usually talk, or I know myself, I usually talk to the coach ahead of time and ask them that if I do have something I want to add, do they mind if I interrupt? And they're always like, oh no, but sometimes in the coaching session, I'll say, oh, do you mind if I offer a suggestion? And, so that way I'm being respectful to the coach. And it's not that the coach, or there's been many times that the coach is stuck and they'll go, what would you suggest? So I think those are all ways that we support them.
Yeah. And then if a goal is on paraphrasing or open-ended, asking more open-ended questions, a side-by-side cue, it's again determined beforehand, but it could be just me going, like, that's a missed opportunity, or there's an opportunity, right? Nonverbal, just kind of like a cue, right? Like, so that they can catch it, like, oh, opportunity for paraphrasing or opportunity to ask a question.
I hate to do this, but I think we're nearly at time. And so I'm going to stop. I'm so glad we got to all the questions though. If anyone still has questions, you're welcome to put them in our class community. That will be sent out in the email as well. We always keep an eye on that. And this would be a perfect conversation to extend into the class community. But thank you so much, Janelle and Lauren and Dawn, for sharing your insights. And thank you all for joining us today. We hope and know that you're leaving with new strategies and inspiration for using the parallel process in your coaching and leadership work. Again, we will be sending the session recording along with some additional coaching resources from Teachstone and resources from this team in an email tomorrow. So you'll have all these tools to keep building on what you learned today. And on behalf of Teachstone, thank you again for spending time with us. And thank you to this team. And I hope maybe we'll see each other all again in person in Chicago at Interact.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.